as we discuss what a wild 24 hours this has been in this case. I mean, just overall reactions the last 24 hours in general.
Disappointment. Last night we had gotten information that not only did they have a possible, they used the word detained. And that's a very weighty term. And we had also heard that not only was this person detained, but he was going to be brought back here to Pima County and, in fact, potentially to the Pima County jail to be interviewed there. Reading those tea leaves isn't hard, so it looked like, okay, they have something quite solid. And then when we heard overnight that, in fact, he was not transported back here and, in fact, released, obviously it all softened up. Now, look, you don't know where this is still going. They had probable cause to search his location. So that tells me they had something, so you can't wash these things out completely, but it certainly looks like we're not quite where we thought we were last night.
So what do you think led authorities to him, to this person in Rio Rico, an hour away from Tucson, and to execute a search warrant on his home?
So, having done investigations like this where you are trying to essentially build a time machine, right? You're trying to go back because you don't have a direct witness. You don't have a fingerprint that comes right back to somebody. You got to go into things like the digital dust that people leave, that kind of stuff. And we've already seen good example of that in the way they were able to reconstruct the video. So if I had to guess, and I don't know, I want to be clear, but I would think it's some combination of something relative to his car. Reportedly, he's a DoorDash driver. So I would think that they got somehow or other some travel in the area that maybe pointed them. And also, I would think something off of the digital world. Maybe he's hitting a particular server. Maybe he did a search or something that led them to believe this person had an unusual interest in Nancy Guthrie. So some combination of all of those things led them to the idea that, okay, that car is of interest to us, because remember, they did the apprehension during a car stop.
He did mention in an interview that, he was possibly maybe doing a delivery in the area at the time. And we reported yesterday that, authorities are pulling traffic cameras, maybe readers, even surveillance footage from nearby gas stations. So you think maybe they saw that his license plate and ran it and followed it?
Quite possibly, especially since with that video, you get an exact time. Now, we had a pretty good idea of what time the person arrived because we knew that at a time certain, the Nest camera went dead. But now, having seen the video, it's pretty clear that that's his initial approach. So now we can say, okay, at that time, which is, I think, 1:47, if I recall, that's when he does that initial approach. That means that it's almost certainly you're going to get the car coming in if you can find it. I'm sure they're scraping at that very, very hard. And my gut tells me somehow or other through his travels, you can order DoorDash in the middle of the night. So he might have been out there doing deliveries. He might have had that somehow or other. He was looking for the address. He searched it because he couldn't find it. Somehow or other, they did that digital investigation. They got to him. But as we know, as of now, it looks to be like swing and a miss. Yeah.
How does this typically work? Do you think there's more than one person of interest and they just happen to have maybe more info on this guy that they follow?
Yeah, I do think there's more than one. Very, very commonly there's going to be, and if you're using the kind of metrics that we're talking about, you're going to get a pool of people who have similar footprints as to what I just described. And so you're going to tier them. Obviously, you're going to go with your most likely first. And that's one of the things I've talked about relative to DNA. If they got and we've all seen that video, the person very clearly who did this was concerned about leaving DNA because he's garbed up head to toe. I think he's actually even wearing two masks if you look closely. I think he's very, very concerned about leaving any touch DNA. But that said, because he's so garbed up and he's got so many layers on, he very well could have sweated. Maybe he dropped a little sweat there. He was in there for 41 minutes at least. We know that. So there's that. But I think that if you get some DNA, it's the kind of thing where, to go to your question, you're going to take that DNA. It doesn't match one-to-one, which we know already because you'd have the perpetrator. You're going to use the investigative genetic genealogy. This is the question I asked at the press conference. You're going to take that DNA, you're going to push it through the commercial databases, the kind of things that people every day use to try to find out their ancestry and things like that. Sure. What happens then is you get a pool back. You got in Koberger, they got, I think it was 12 or 14, someplace in there, possibles. The difference now is that we've come a long way in AI since just Koberger, which was 3 years ago. If you get a pool of 600 possibles that are even remotely related to that DNA, because that's how it works, throw the AI at it, it can do all the database searches that used to take a long time instantaneously. And so with the Bureau's capabilities now, that is FBI, plus that kind of new technology. I'm hopeful on that front, but you got to have the DNA first. And very clearly, they don't have a one-to-one match because last night they had a search warrant. They would have taken a swab from the possible and done that match.
Well, outside of, possible DNA, we got that doorbell camera footage for the first time. It was previously inaccessible, and now that it exists, what are authorities kind of honing in? Like, what details do they want to look into now that they have that kind of image?
A couple things off the video and then slightly besides. So, first of all, in the video, we've all seen it by now. Yep. You're going to want to do a trace back to see where and how the stuff he's wearing was bought. I'm going to reference the case that the FBI just solved in Washington, D.C. about the guy that put the pipe bombs outside of the RNC and the DNC. He is still innocent until proven guilty, but he's under arrest for doing that. They got him off of doing a trace of where he bought the batteries years before. They're doing a product search because they had the batteries because the devices didn't detonate. In this instance, you have the sweatshirt that he's wearing. That seems to be identified from what I've seen. It's fairly unique. You might be able to get someplace with the gloves or the shoes, the holster, which is a little unusual.
The backpack?
The backpack, people are saying that that's identified. To me, that looks kind of generic, but okay, let's see if it's accurate. The point is, you have all of these purchase data points. You can try to collate them, see who's bought in this area, all of those things over the last 6 months. Again, a lot of painstaking work, but if you have good database technology, AI, things like that, they can get there faster. You can crunch tons of data like this. The other thing is that what they did with the front door camera, I'm hopeful they can do the same thing. Obviously, they went with their best foot first. They said, okay, get that front door camera. Well, we know there's a lot of other cameras on our house. So I'm hopeful that they can use the same technique that they used to get this, to get a few other images, including potentially a good image of his walk. Because gait technology has come a long way as well, and people recognize each other's walks. Think about somebody in your life. You see him from a half a block away. You say, oh, I know who that is. People see him walking a good number of steps. There's a very good chance that somebody's going to say, I think I know who that is.
When you saw the footage, what was your gut instinct about this suspect? Did he look professional to you, an amateur?
Yeah, not a professional, obviously. And also, kind of low functioning, if I can say that, because think about what he does. He comes up, he looks very casual, right? He certainly doesn't seem concerned. And then he does this strange thing where he goes over, he pulls that bush out to try to cover the Nest camera. That just doesn't make sense. There's no way to anchor it there. If he had even taken a handful of dirt and smeared it on the lens, it would make more sense. What kind of thinking process is that? I'm going to pull a piece of bush out and cover this thing. So that was my first impression about his demeanor and how he's walking. He seems entirely unconcerned. But the thing that is concerning is that he's got a full backpack on the way in. If he's a casual burglar, which a lot of us at first thought, like maybe this is a burglary gone bad, he's going in with a loaded backpack. You don't do that. You go in with an empty backpack if you're going to steal a bunch of stuff and come out with the backpack full. So you got to say to yourself, what's in that backpack that's so full that he's going into that residence planning to do?
Yeah, we initially thought it was a break-in gone wrong, but as we know, Nancy, of course, was taking from her home. So let me ask you this. Do you think this was a one-man job?
I mean, it seems to be, right? I mean, which is unusual. History shows us that things like this, abductions, are almost always more than one person. You need not only for the abduction, but to hold somebody someplace while the other person runs around, communicates, makes phone calls, does all the stuff that we traditionally know about in kidnapping. But I don't see any indicia. I don't know. Maybe there's somebody waiting in the car, but right now I see no indicia that there's anybody else involved. And, I think that by now the authorities would have a pretty good idea about that from footprints and things like that to say, we think there's more than one piece here.
Early on in this case, it was reported that there were details in these ransom notes that led authorities to believe that this is legit. But I want to know, in your opinion, do you think this is a situation where the suspect knew Nancy or at least cased the house to learn as much about her before taking her?
The idea that he really knew the situation intimately, hard to ascribe to that when you consider what went on with the front ring camera. The ring cameras are visible. Now, I think that he must have done some little bit of recon, and I base it on the following. When he walks up, he's keeping his head down. I think from the road, at least, he had been able to see somehow or other a ring camera that was perched up high. She had a number of cameras, or at least his surmise there was one up there, and so he's keeping his head down. But the idea that he was intimately familiar with the location, I find hard to believe because it is audible that he had to call at the front door relative to the Nest camera and the bush, which, I mean, if he knew about that, one piece of duct tape and that handles that. So I have a hard time thinking that he was that familiar with the location. But that said, I cannot also ascribe to the idea that this was random and that he just ended up at that house. That's asking a lot when you consider her connections, obviously, to the poor Savannah Guthrie and the rest of the family.
People are reporting that there was activity in this Bitcoin account. Could that be the FBI phishing for a VPN or a possible location?
Yeah, I mean, look, at this point, we're past the two deadlines that had in notes that had that Bitcoin wallet in it. My understanding is the second note did not have the Bitcoin wallet in it. So for all I know, that second note is from a completely different guy. This feels like a ransomware situation, to me, with the notes, which is very, very common in the ransomware world. They seize your company and they say, okay, if you want your computers unlocked, you got to pay. I mention that because very often with ransomware, you get third-party bad guys who come in and say, pay us, and people pay, and they don't realize they're paying the wrong people. So my point is, it feels like a pile-on to me, and the activity in the account, it could be they threw a few $100 in it to see if maybe he got an alert. It could be that they were just testing that account to see if it was viable, if they ever had to use it. It could be that they were hoping to smoke out whoever put it up so that if the $300 hits the account, that somehow or other they get a notification or something like that, and maybe they can see the packet moving. The other possibility is this, though. If it's people who are hoaxsters and they're hoaxing here to try to get in on it and get paid, they have stood up a Bitcoin wallet. If they are bad guys, let's say someplace in Russia or something, what they'll do is they'll just leave it up. Say, oh, okay, it didn't work in the Guthrie situation, but we have this thing up. We'll use it for our normal business as usual, which is the kind of stuff that they do, selling identities for $100 each, which they keep the price of a stolen identity low so people around the world can buy them. So they just may be a bad guy account that now went back to business as usual.
What's your reaction from this new note given to TMZ asking for 1 Bitcoin in the account in exchange for info on the...
Yeah, I mean, look, you have to be skeptical of that, not only because of the two earlier notes, but the fact that the reward is $50,000 and a Bitcoin's only going for 66 right now, whereas if you came forward, you'd be a hero, you'd get the reward, and it's not much less money. You could probably get more. So it argues some illogic to me, and I have to say, in light of all the smoke around this, other people trying to pile on, reportedly there's an email. You can bet that they're exploiting that email, and if this is a hoax, I hope they get to this person because it's really a terrible thing to do.